You see, my life is really complex. You should look at the NECA Toys Batman the 1989 movie, 1/4 scale Batman. Based on the iconic 1989 film that defined Batman for the modern generation, NECA presents the 18-inch tall Caped Crusader as an articulated figure. This quarter-scale figure features Michael Keaton's likeness, utility belt, batarang, grapple gun, interchangeable hands, and a real fabric cape. With over 20 points of articulation and incredibly realistic detail, this is a must-have for Batman fans and collectors. Just before we get things started, I'd like to thank the folks over at NECA Toys that provided this sample of the quarter-scale Batman from the classic 1989 film that we could have a look at in this review. If you had missed your chance to get the quarter-scale Batman the first time around he was circulated, you'd be happy to know that many online sites right now are advertising this guy in stock if you wanted to pick him up right now. For a couple of size comparisons, even though technically they're not from the same Batman flick, we can certainly still bring in the quarter-scale Catwoman that we looked at not too long ago. And we can also look at the quarter-scale mayoral penguin, again, looked at not too long ago. Now, I know Batman is taller than Danny DeVito, or Michael Keaton is taller than Danny DeVito, and it translates to, of course, Batman being a little bit taller than the character, but I feel like he might be a little still oversized when you compare him against Catwoman. I feel like their height should be a little bit closer to one another, but I think the quarter-scale Batman came out first. Catwoman then came out later, along with the Penguin, so as a result of it, they're not quite 100% scaled accordingly to the way that they are in the films. Going through the accessories that come packaged along with bats, the first one we'll have a look at is his Grapple Launcher. Funny enough, we just finished having a look at the 1:1 scale Grapple Launcher from the 1989 film, also produced from NECA Toys. And while that one was produced to fit in your hand, being a 1:1 scale replica, this is scaled down for obvious reasons, going to be fitting into this Batman's hands. The detail is nice on it, mostly molded here in black plastic with some additional silver paint added on the end of it. The gold hook, as you can see, similar to the 1:1 scale counterpart, but this one actually doesn't remove. It's molded to the rest of the Grapple Launcher. And similar to its 1:1 counterpart, you can flip this around as well, and on the back side, or 1:1 sides here, it has a flip-down handle. Now, when you flip the handle down, it seems to be hitting past the point of plastic, maybe like right there, but you can kind of feel it. It hits like a little point and sort of locks it into place. It's still loose, but it sort of has a stopping point where once it gets past that area, it sort of does click into place. Now, the original Grapple Launcher, this is the second time we've looked at this Batman. The original one, if you wanted to go back and watch my review of that, the first time we got the quarter-scale Batman, the Grapple Launcher had the notable silver that was painted on the plate here. The re-release of Batman, though, they've actually just gone back to using just the molding of the black plastic. So it does lose a little bit versus the original quarter-scale Batman that we looked at earlier. Now, this does fit into his hand. It fits into one of his hands, and it's this hand right here. When you get it into his hand, all you really have to do is kind of shimmy it around the fingers, kind of get it in on an angle like this, and once you fit it around the thumb, you're basically good to go. Just like that. And as you can see, he holds it pretty well to the point where even having the trigger finger, almost the next finger down from that, actually lining up to where the actual activation trigger is. That's nice. I like that they actually included a hand for that. Now, the thing about the Grapple Launcher, comparing it to the original one that we had gotten before, I'm going to fold things up here. The Grapple Launcher would have been able to detach. The front half of it would be able to remove from the back half of it, and you'd essentially have two pieces. I can get the top one removed. You can kind of see it removing from the top there. See the gap starting to form, but I can't seem to remove it here. I've tried putting in hot water. I've tried actually taking a hairdryer to see if I could soften up the plastic, and it doesn't seem like it really wants to give, like I'm able to remove it. I really didn't want to break it, but the idea is it should detach into two parts, like the original one did before. And then it comes included with this part, this little attachment piece that goes onto the utility belt. How it works is you basically put it on like this, and I'll show you in a second. This little part here, the little ledge on the top and the bottom, fit around the utility belt. And then in a perfect world, you'd be able to remove the top half of this, and this plugs onto this peg right here. Well, the bottom half, the main part of the Grapple Launcher, actually just fits basically lining the shapes up, shape to shape, and that fits into place like that. Again, in a perfect world, the top half of this would have been able to detach and attach right to here, so you'd have two parts of the grapple launcher. For one reason or another, it seems like it's permanently molded together. I can remove this part of it, but I can't seem to free this part, no matter how much trying I seem to do. Another one of his gadgets, the figure comes included with his Batarang. The Batarang, like the 1-to-1 scale counterpart, which we did actually have a look at not too long ago, also produced from NECA Toys, does have the capabilities of folding in on itself. If you look at where the hinge joint is, you're basically folding it against the hinge. You fold it in once, and then from the side, you take those wings and you fold them the opposite way. And it makes for some convenient packed up storage. Although there really isn't a place on the utility belt where this can house, at least it does give you the look of having a fold-up Batarang. And again, to fold it back out, bring these wings out first, and then just sort of lock everything together. It doesn't lock as much as it sort of feels like there's a friction to it, that when it gets to a point, it sort of does stay in place. I think when we had a look at the original quarter scale Batman, which was many, many years ago, if you guys wanted to go back and watch that video, it's rough, it's old. I apologize well in advance. But the original Batarang, I think, was a lot looser. The wings seem to be a lot floppier from what I remember. Since then, they seem to have improved the hinges, where it's a nice tight fit, and the Batarang, like I said, isn't really loose when he's holding in his hand. Speaking of holding in hands, I guess we can continue looking at Batman's additional hands. He does also have a couple of hands for holding the Batarang. It fits in place, and while you wouldn't necessarily want to try the Blizzard test, could we try the Blizzard test? Okay, Blizzard test shows that the Batarang does stay well enough in his hand that it's not going to fall out. And he comes with two variations of that, well, at least opposing hands on either side of him. So if you want to have the Batarang held on this hand or this hand, at least they've got you covered with both hands to do it. The figure will also include this tri-hook attachment that he uses at the end of the movie. Now, mind you, in the end of the movie, he would attach this or already have this as an attachment on the end of the grapple launcher, and he would fire this off. But for the obvious reasons that the grapple launcher is pre-molded, there really isn't a place where you can detach the hook and apply this instead. It does have some nice gold added to each one of the hooks on the end of it, and it serves as like a nice little additional piece that the original quarter scale release of this Batman did have as well. So they haven't really brought any new different accessories to the table. It's the same ones that we've gotten before, and similar to the one we have also gotten before. You can see like there's a little loop on the end of that. To come included also with the figure, you get yourself this Grapple Line. And the Grapple Line is similar to fishing line, although it has a much more stretchier material that they're using for it. What you do is just take the end of the line, providing you can actually find the end of the line, and you're going to thread the needle. Now, I've had some success threading needles in the past. You're just going to basically take that and you're going to thread it through the looplet like this. It's actually not really that difficult either. The type of material that they're using for this line is, as you can see, very stretchy, very flexible. And you just feed that through, and I suppose you probably could just tie it off into a knot. Now the other end of it, though, as we feed our way all the way to the end, where's the end of it? Where's the end of it? Right here. On the very end, there's like a very obvious plug. And yet, the plug doesn't seem to plug anywhere on the utility belt, doesn't plug into his hand, and nor does it plug into the grapple line. I would have thought, actually, that this would have attached to the grapple launcher on the very end. Like you would have been able to take the hook out and plug this into place, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So it's more so something that Batman could just hold in his hands. The last of his accessories are these additional rod pieces. I'm going to pick them up right now. You may not even be able to see them just yet. But they sort of look like batons. Batons with what appears to be metal rods sticking out from them. These will actually feed inside the interior of his cape, actually out the outer seam of his cape. There's a little space there where you can slide these through. And then Batman can then hold the batons in his hand if you want to have that wide fanned out cape effect that he has in the movie. It probably would be a lot easier to simply show you. So what we're going to do, I'm going to just fan out his cape here. And funny enough, though, about his cape, the cape was flipped the wrong way when it came out of the packaging. I only just realized it now in between cuts here. I've taken the liberty of actually just popping off his head, taking off the cape, flipping it around, Velcroing it back in place, and then popping his head. So if you may have seen it at the beginning of the review, he didn't actually have that more faux leather material on the outside. He actually had it on the inside, and it was flipped around. I guess they must have just assembled it in error. But anyways, we're going to go and look at the side of the cape here. And I just want to draw your attention to right, what about 6 inches, a little shy of 6 inches up from the end of the cape. You'll see that there's a little hole right there. Can you see it? Right there. You're going to take the rod. It almost, again, seems like we're doing a tutorial here, but you're going to just take the rod and you're going to feed it through. And providing you get it everything lined up straight, it's quite easy to feed. You probably can see it right there, feeding the rod, the metal rod, straight through. That's on the one side, and then you're basically just going to do the same thing and rinse and repeat on this side. Then from there, take the handles of the batons and feed them into Batman's hands, and you have a look that looks like this. It's rather quite impressive to have him on display, providing you've got the appropriate space to accommodate Batman with his fanned wings out like this. One side effect, though, with having the wings up like this is that you're going to be pushing the cape upward. And you may already be able to see it right here that it does start lifting up his cowl. You may not want to have it as high of a reach like this, or you may have to then go back, push the cowl back down once you've got the wings fanned like this to get that desired look that you want. Now that we've wrapped up looking at Batman's accessories, we can now finally get a closer look at the figure itself. And for the obvious places to start, we're going to go with first the head portrait. I don't think that NECA has done anything to tweak or change the original mold, because keeping in mind as well, this is a re-released figure from one that was released years ago. I never really had a problem with the mold then. And short of one little area, I don't find I have any bit of a problem with the mold now either. It looks like Michael Keaton from all the sides. And I'm going to do my best to rotate this so you can certainly see it from the different angles. But let me just point out the one problem I have with the head sculpt. It's sort of like right around here of his face. He does have the very trademark pouting lips that Michael Keaton brought to his Batman. But if you look at the side of his face, now when I did take the figure out of the packaging, the first thing I looked at was his face, and I thought there may have been like loose fibers or hairs against the side of his face. There is these visible pock marks on Batman's face sculpt. Not so much up here, but right down here. This could have maybe been an opportunity where they could have gone in and filled in some of those little holes and marks that are on his face. It is certainly a lot more noticeable, admittingly, when you see it so close like this. I mean, yeah, if you have it on a shelf further away, you're probably not going to see it as much. And of course, we're looking at this with a higher definition, so we're going to be able to see some of those features a little more up close and personal. It's about the only thing that I'm not super crazy about when it comes to the face. But again, you're not probably going to be seeing a figure so close like this. You're probably going to be having it on a shelf and on display. And if you look at it from a distance, it definitely very much reads like Michael Keaton to me. It looks like the Cowl from the 1989 film, which one of the things about the Cowl was he almost had like more of a swollen head. Very more profound eyebrowed area and cheek areas of his cowl. Whereas in the Batman Returns version, they sort of made it more... They kind of blocked it off a little bit more, so it went right into the ears. Where here you can kind of see on the 89 design, the ears sort of serve as a separate extension, not a continued mold to the rest of the cowl. Speaking, though, of the cowl, one thing I really like about this is, I don't know if you can actually see it or not, but his eyes look like a separate piece from the rest of the cowl, or the other way around, really. The cowl looks like a separate piece from the rest of his eyes. So if you see it, well, even like right there, it looks clearly like it's an extra piece that's been over top of his face. So it doesn't look like it's part of the same mold. I really like that. It looks like he's actually wearing a mask. One of the other things about the notable features about the 89 cowl is that you can kind of see when you look at it close like this, it kind of looks like the surface of asphalt. The cowl for the time period of when they made the cowl for the 89 film, it sort of had a more cruder, coarser look to the texturing of it. Sort of resembled more like a sponge. I think like NECA toys have really done that well. The 90s Batman Returns has a much cleaner looking cowl when you compare the two, but definitely like the 89 cowl has a much more, like I said, coarser looking surface to it. I'm glad they've done that really quite well here on the quarter scale release of Batman. If you, again, can overlook the fact he does have like these little pock marks on the sides of his face, it's kind of like right here, and it's kind of like right here. But again, if you see it from a distance, it is a really nice looking head sculpt. It was good then, and it was good. It's just as good now. It very much does still very much look like the 89 Batman design. Spent so much time talking about just the Batman cowl. Let's look at the rest of his body, of course. Now, he does have this body armor. If we lift the cape up, and just drape this over, and I can't even believe, I didn't spot the fact that the cape was on the wrong way. Taking out the packaging, the inside of the cape is kind of more of a matte material, whereas the outside has that more faux leather material because it's supposed to look like a bat wing. Literally, though, taking it out of the packaging, it was flipped the other way around. And all that was really involved was popping the head off, and the two parts of the cape were together by a Velcro closure. I just unvelcroed it, literally flipped the cape around, did it back up, popped the cowl back into place. Now it should be the way that the cape is, because the inside of the cape is kind of more of a parachute material, and then the outside of the cape is supposed to look more like a bat wing, this faux leather material. And it's a really nice material that they've decided to go with for the cape. Again, I don't think anything has changed from the original cape to this one here, the re-release. Anyways, we got sidetracked here. We're going to move the cape just back a little bit here, draping it over on either side of Batman. I want to like lift up his arm as best I can, and similar to the way it's designed in the movie, the body armor kind of consists of two halves that are sandwiched together. He basically had a more serviceable rubber suit that he could wear, and then they kind of sculpted like the armor pieces on the back of it and the front of it. And as you can see, similar to that costume from the '89 film, they've actually replicated that nicely here on the figure. You've got like little tight wrinkles here where this would have been stretched over Michael Keaton's frame. And even like when you're looking at the bicep has additional plates of armor that they put over top of it. Some thicker rubber when they were making the suit. The gauntlets do have the little spikes on them. And of course, like the film, the outer area of the padding has more of a matte finish, while the inside is sort of more of a shinier finish. You can see a lot more of that in the glove. I really like the gloves too. I'm going to spin this one around so you can see it. The inside has that little texturing. He doesn't have that little plate piece that flips out when he's battling the guy in the alleyway. Was it the alleyway or was it in the cathedral? I think it was in the alleyway. But instead what he's got though is the little silver kind of beads that have been painted on the inside of his glove, giving a little bit of additional texturing. The blades, the gauntlet blades look really nice. They're softer plastic, so if you're worried that these are going to be breaking off potentially, you don't have to worry. Very, very soft plastic. In fact, you can kind of see me moving them. You can see me moving them back and forth like this. One issue I do have with the Batman outfit, and it's more based on the design and then NECA having to sort of work around this, is the utility belt. The utility belt looks good, and I did want to really go back to the original clip, didn't I? I'm going to go ahead and take that clip piece. Remember this we looked at earlier? That basically just fits underneath the utility belt, and then you sort of just fitting it onto the top. And you get this like this. Now again, I can't get that grapple launcher to detach into two halves. This should technically also be flipped around the other way. Like that. Yeah, flipped from the top, clipped on the top, and then flipped around. But this should really be two pieces, and then that would just fit. You really would want to fit it really to the side of the utility belt, not really from the front, because it would block the buckle. Speaking, though, of the buckle, though, and that was the point really I wanted to mention, was the top of the armor piece. It's an overlay piece, so it goes over top, and if you're not careful, when you start moving, when we look at more of the articulation on the figure, you'll maybe see periodically I may have to go in there and kind of fix the utility belt, because this part of the plastic drapes down, and then you've also got like the top part of his pants, essentially, it's a separate piece of plastic as well. And between those two, you're going to, every once in a while, have to go in there and just readjust the utility belt. Even taking out the packaging, I found like the top part of this, the actual armor piece, tap, 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 was actually just draping over top of the utility belt. So I just had to kind of pull this up a little bit, unfree the utility belt, which is a separate piece, by the way, as well. It's softer plastic. And I just had to then tuck the armor behind it, so you get the utility belt sticking out. I always really like the design of the utility belt. It still sticks to that kind of yellow, well, the yellow color scheme that the original 60s Batman utility belt was, but certainly a lot more modernized. We get a little bit further down on the figure, more tighter to the body material. And again, you've got the larger knee pads here that he has that goes all the way down to his bat boots. Now, he was actually wearing sneakers underneath the boot guards. And you can kind of see the sneakers underneath all of that. You think that they would have gone in and customized them a little bit more, but anyways, you can kind of see his sneakers underneath the boot guards. And the boot guards are actually a softer plastic. I'm trying not to block the light while I'm doing this. They're softer plastic, so it certainly won't get in the way of things when it comes to the articulation and trying to actually move these feet back and forth. Speaking of articulation, let's have a look at the articulation now on Batman. Now, I do have to go in there, and I think I have to push this down a little bit more onto the ball joint, because I find when I'm moving the head up and down, this will be something that you're probably going to notice as well. When you tilt the head up of Batman, it sort of dislodges it from the ball peg. You can kind of rotate it still back and forth. You can kind of move it down a little bit, but he literally is relegated to the Batman turn that Michael Keaton made famous in the '89 movie, where he literally has to turn to see what he's looking at. Yeah, you can rotate it back and forth, but moving it up and down is going to give you a little bit of problems, and you're going to have to probably go in there occasionally and just fix up things, because the cape's going to come loose a little bit on you. Let's just get that back into place. There we go. As for the arms, now the arms hinge out. Thank goodness they hinge well enough that you can get that wing fan on Batman. You can bring the arms forward. You can bring the arms back. He does have only just a single hinge on the elbow, which then allows the forearm area of Batman to rotate back and forth. And of course, you can rotate his hands all the way around as well. Upper torso is on a ball joint. The lower torso seems to also be on some sort of serviceable joint. It actually could be the case where the armor piece shifts on its own as a top piece that goes over top of the torso body. And then the lower part of the body is actually the thing that's on the ball joint. And yeah, you're going to have to go in there and fix the belt occasionally. For the legs are on a nice ratcheted joint, nice tight legs, so it's going to mean that Batman long-term isn't going to start weebling and wobbling on you. You can hear those nice tight ratcheted joints. The legs go forward, legs go back. He has a single hinge in the knee, which allows the lower leg to rotate back and forth. And then going back to the feet that we were talking about last, if you go up and down, you can also rock them back and forth as well. It's a nice looking Batman. It's one of those cases as well that when we looked at this Batman the first time around, man, how many years ago was that? I parted ways with him because I thought to myself, I really didn't want to get into the realm of collecting 1/4 scale Batman figures, or really 1/4 scale NECA figures as a whole, because they take up so much more space. Since then, I have sort of course corrected. I've kind of changed my philosophy when it comes to 1/4 scale figures that NECA Toys are producing. NECA actually benefits, well, you as a collector benefit when NECA Toys releases 1/4 scale figures, because I find you get a lot more of those honed in details that smaller scale down versions of those figures don't really benefit as much from. It also is the case too that just recently getting the Batman Returns mayoral penguin and the Catwoman again, another figure that I parted ways with, I've sort of now taken more to the liking of collecting 1/4 scale Batman figures, or really just, again, NECA figures as a whole. As a resulting of it, I'm really looking forward to putting this Batman on display. Whether I will actually have him displayed with the fanned out wings is it's probably not going to happen, because I just don't have that much space to work with. But I'm definitely looking at putting this guy on display along with the 1/4 scale Catwoman and the 1/4 scale Penguin that we looked at earlier. Unlike the Batman Returns 1/4 scale sized Penguin and 1/4 scale format Catwoman that we looked at earlier, who only sadly benefited from being released in that 1/4 scale size, 1989 Batman, on the other hand, was released at one point in a smaller 7-inch sized figure. He was released, in fact, twice by NECA Toys. This traditional color scheme of Batman, and then that far out NES color scheme was blue and purple. I've done the reviews of both of those if you'd like to go back and check them out. But unfortunately, if you're in the market of trying to track down the 7-inch version of the 1989 Batman, good luck. It is going to set you back a little bit. In fact, ironically enough, you may find yourself spending less to get the re-release of the 1/4 scale Batman than it is to try to track down that 7-inch sized figure. One of the benefits also of getting the 1/4 scale size Batman is because, one of which we already talked about in this review, being that we only had the Penguin and the Catwoman released of this size, for obvious reasons, this Batman fits better with that scale. One of the benefits also is the fact that you can see some of the features a little bit more profound on the 1/4 scale than you would on the normal size, because when you get 7-inch scaled figures, everything sort of has to be compacted. So some of the features may not look as defined as you would get with a 1/4 scale. Now, the other end of it, though, when we looked at the 1/4 scale sized Batman here, yeah, you do see a little more of those kind of little pock marks, the little kind of imperfections on the side of his face. It's about the only thing I wish they could have gone in and touched back up. And actually, the grapnel gun also gave me a little bit of problems, too. The original grapnel gun, when we looked at it for the first release, way back when I still was doing things on a black backdrop, yeah, looking at a black Batman on a black backdrop, that seemed like a really good idea at the time. But that grapnel gun back then, I was able to detach and have as 2 separate pieces and could clip onto the clip that fits onto the utility belt. For one reason or another, I couldn't get it on this Batman. One of the parts, the top part, could free itself, but that bottom part, no matter how much I tried, I heated it in water, it just wouldn't give. I'm going to see if I can still keep fighting it, but with a peg that small, I don't want to run the risk of breaking it. Because once I break it, short of me gluing it back together, I'm going to have to take those two halves and they're not going to attach again because I would have broken off the peg. I really like the look of this Batman, and especially considering, mentioned already, because Catwoman and Penguin only came in that release size. Of course, if you're looking to get a Batman to go along with it, the quarter scale Batman is right up your Gotham alley. See what I did there? A big thank you, though, to the folks over at NECA Toys that provided this sample of the quarter scale Batman from the 1989 film. In case you are curious and would like to pick this one up for yourself, it is available right now through various online sites. And I think most retail stores are probably stocking this guy as well. If you have picked up the reissue Batman, let me know down below in the comment section what you guys think of it. Or if you still have the original one that was released years ago, when I decided to review it on a black backdrop. What was I thinking? Hey now, if you're new to this channel, enjoying the content you're seeing, and in fact enjoyed this specific video, how about you hit this video with a like? And if you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and turn on the bell notification so you get those friendly reminders of when new videos are going to be popping up. And in case you are also curious, because you seem to be asking a lot of questions, we will be looking at more NECA reviews in the not so distant future, so make sure you keep your peepers peeled to this channel. And as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.